All right, everybody. Welcome to this exciting event, How to Adapt and Scale Digital Health Solutions Across the EU. We are still waiting some of the guests, but we have to get going. And I am excited to be today your stage host. My name is Thor Juhl Groth. I'm the head of communications at the Danish Center for Digital Psychiatry, and I will hopefully help you smoothly through the day. But to start the day off, we will have an introductory conversation with our hosts today. 3 co-hosts are joining me on stage in a moment, and I couldn't imagine 3 more relevant people to kick this off with, Danish leaders and experts in this area. And would you please join me on the stage? We have Marie Paldam Folker, the Managing Director for the Danish Center for Digital Psychiatry. We have Diana Arskovich, the CEO of the Danish Life Science Cluster. And we also luckily have today Karin Hamberg, the Chief Medical Officer and the Chair of the Danish Lighthouse Life Science Partnership. And you have agreed to join me here to elaborate on why this agenda and this day-to-day specifically is so important to you. And I have a couple of questions for you. I will start with you, Marie. What are you hoping to gain from this day? Why is this day and this agenda so important to you and the Danish Center for Digital Psychiatry?
Yes, thank you, Thor. Well, the dialogue on how to adapt and scale digital health solutions across Europe is crucial out of several reasons. So people with mental health disorders in Spain, in Germany, in Denmark, they share the same difficulties in accessing care, mental health care, in experiencing stigma in receiving care. They experience long wait lists and service gaps, and they sadly experience mental health care systems that are siloed and fragmented. And effective and safe digital mental health technologies, they can augment, they can expand access to care. So they are vital in addressing the growing mental health crisis and the shortage of mental health care professionals. But today, again, sadly, the uptake of these digital technologies is super slow and also uneven across European borders and European regions. So I guess cross-border collaboration is just super important for scaling effective and safe digital tools. Also in order to reduce health disparities in access to care. So I guess we need to collaborate, we need to coordinate in order to advance the use of digital mental health technologies.
And I guess one of the reasons why we're here today is because it's not easy.
No.
It is difficult, and many digital health providers find it difficult. Why?
Well, I guess this is the kind of theme that we will explore today. But of course, the scaling of digital mental health is extremely complex. We have cultural barriers, legal barriers, linguistic barriers, and then greater alignment in reimbursement, in IT health infrastructure, in interoperability is really necessary. And some of the building blocks in moving forward. And I guess that's also why the Center for Digital Psychiatry has been part of the SUPER project, because that project has specifically addressed how can we do this by involving service users in the development and implementation. But also, that's why we're part of the Lighthouse Life Science Partnership, because that's also what's addressed. So yeah, I'm here to learn, and to answer the first part of your question, I really hope to meet a lot of different developers, both in public and private organizations and learn and meet today.
Thank you. Diana, I remember when we started looking for a partner, we found a very enthusiastic partner when we started reaching out to you, and that was so awesome. And why was it important for you to co-host this event with this agenda, upscaling digital health in the EU?
Thank you, Tor, and thank you everyone for coming. It is a really important agenda to talk about mental health, not just for the project here, but really to tackle the societal problems that we have in common all over the world, and especially in Europe, where we actually have the potential of learning much better from each other through these programs. So I think I am, in the Danish Life Science Cluster, we believe that we will get further by collaboration. And collaborating across the private and public sector with the knowledge sector as well, we can lean on each other's experience. There's a pool of knowledge that we all have from the different angles that we view the problems from. And this, when we pull it together, we can learn from each other and build on top of that. So that's why I'm hoping that at the end of today, we will get some of the answers that we're looking for the challenge of scaling. Scaling is a craft. There's so many aspects of it, but really it comes down to people leading. And we need people that are leading in the public sector that will show the way through the practice that we do things. But we also need them in the industry. And I'm so happy to see that we have a lot of the leaders in the industry here as well. And thank you, Karin, for co-hosting as well. This is what we need. Strong leaders that believe in sharing knowledge and that will share openly and not cover up their successes, but really pay it forward.
Yes, excellent. And how can you and the Danish Lighthouse Life Science Partnership contribute to this agenda, do you think? Do you hope?
I hope that we can facilitate, first of all, that we can have these open talks, that we will not talk shop, but talk knowledge and learn from each other. And by doing this, get to the next level from the cliches. We all know that it is hard to scale. I mean, come on, look at all the conferences. They all got this topic named, right? But let's get to the deeper points of it. So how do we meet these challenges in the daily life that we work, where we have these experiences, and when we try to do this? From different companies' aspects of trying to find solutions, we will find different challenges. One of them can be culture, but some of it can be procurement. We don't get paid, or we don't see business models, we don't see budgets for it. So the ambitions in the public sector from the politicians are really high, but finding the right budgets where they really procure and the level of vision they have, it's not so much. So we need to push this agenda with a common force to make this happen. And not just for each country, but cross-border, so that we can drive the scale. And the scale, when it comes to international scenery, of course we can do knowledge sharing in the EU programs like Super here, but we also need the companies to make business models where it's actually a good business to do the right thing.
Yes, definitely. I think that's a perfect segue to our final enthusiastic co-host. And thank you so much for being so gracious host here. It's a beautiful new room you have here. Karin, you have both the role as the Chief Medical Officer at Lundbeck and as the Chair in the Lighthouse Partnership. Why is scaling digital health important to you, and what do you hope to gain from hosting such an event here today?
Thank you, Tor, for asking that question, and thank you everyone for coming here. I'm thrilled about seeing so many people in the audience who I really hope can be able to contribute to this agenda. The commonalities. Thank you. That works better. That was a welcome that you just missed, but you will get one again. The commonalities here are really the mental health challenges for me, and they are expanding, unfortunately, at a global level. And there are so many unmet needs in this space and so many patients that need to be treated. So for me, that brings together the purpose both of Lundbeck, who develop pharmaceutical treatments for that area, but also for the Lighthouse, who bring in innovation and help bridge those partners that can contribute to solving that agenda generally. So I see a huge space for digital solutions, specifically in mental health. And I see it not only in the treatment, I actually see it very early on in the diagnosis, the treatment, but also in the access space. And I see it also in combination with treatments. When in Lundbeck we develop treatment, we talk a lot about the biological links in treatment, and we talk about biological biomarkers as segues for us to know if the drug will work. Those biological markers do not necessarily exist in areas like, for example, psychiatry. And that makes it enormously difficult to develop therapeutic drugs for the treatment of psychiatry. And unfortunately, there haven't been much progress in the recent years in that area. I have the thinking that digital might be a segue to actually solve that issue. What if biological markers are not just biomarkers? What if they are digital biomarkers and can help us look at these disorders in a completely new perspective? So obviously, any treatment that serves an unmet need is of no value if it doesn't reach the patient, and that's where scalability comes into the picture. So crossing those barriers, I think we as a company can bring in therapeutic knowledge in the disease areas that can help bridge those treatments and those technologies that some of you will bring to the table. And that crosstalk is so important in order for us to be successful together. So scalability is about overcoming barriers, and that can be regulatory barriers, it can be linguistic barriers, that's you also mentioned, Marie, it can be cultural barriers, it can be technology barriers. So there are lots of these, and that's why the platform, the Lighthouse, is so important, because it brings together the partners to overcome these barriers by working together. And so what I hope to get here is insights, I hope to get collaboration, and I hope to be inspired by what you bring to the table in terms of supporting a future of digital mental health, which is evidence-based and sustainable.
Excellent. And if our participants today are looking at you at Lundbeck and the Lighthouse and are interested, how can you contribute to this scaling journey in digital health?
I think in terms of the Lighthouse, what the Lundbeck participation can bring is again this disease insight, these deep insights. We're basically the only company globally who is exclusively focused on these disease areas. There may be others doing drugs in this area, but we only focus on this. So we have a deep insight, and we hope to be able to contribute with that insight in working together with some of you, to be inspired by you, but also to use our network, our global network, our affiliates, in potentially helping to overcome some of the barriers of scalability and bring some of these ideas to new markets together with some of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Karin, Diana, and Marie. We have to press on, and let's give them a hand. And then I will give a brief introduction to today's program, because it is an exciting one, and it's a program that is not especially focused on mental health, but definitely focused on scaling digital solutions across the EU. We will try to give you both an overview of the situation in the European Union, and we will try to give you as many concrete insights from service providers who are doing this scaling right now today. So an overview and concrete insights, hopefully making it possible for you to join this scaling journey even more. I also want to stress that, of course, we have keynotes and we have some people on the stage, but in my view, the participants today are perhaps the most valuable asset we have. So please have a focus on using the networking opportunities. Feel free to reach out to any of the keynotes, any of the speed talkers later, and definitely use each other's networking. There will be lunch and drinks outside in the lounge area, and the lunch and drinks should stay out there. I've been told to stress. And also outside in the lounge area, there's stairs downstairs for the toilets. You go down the stairs, and on your right hand, there's a door you go through, and then you'll find the toilets out there. And one last thing, today's event is recorded for those who couldn't participate. So we hope to have a lot of questions and comments from you during the day. Please wait for us to provide you a microphone, and then everything will be fine. All right. In just a moment, we have the pleasure that Dr. Moredrik Chibi from the WHO Europe will provide you with an overview of the situation in the EU right now regarding digital health. After that, we have Yvette Rook, who will present the insights from this exciting new project called Super. And after that, we have a segment that I look especially forward to. We will be giving you the opportunity to meet 3 of 6 speed talkers. These are service providers who are scaling digital health right now. But beware, you only have the time to hear 3 of the 6 talks. So on the chairs at the back of the program, there is a brief presentation of each speed talker. So do have a look. Before you know, you have to choose, and you can't. You only have once in a lifetime to hear these 6 companies. Then we will have lunch. The lunch will also be outside in the lounge area. Again, use the opportunity for networking. And at 1 o'clock, Petra Hogendorn will give us an insight into the state of guidelines and standards specifically in the EU, and tell us where we are, but also what the opportunities and difficulties are using these kinds of tools for making scaling easier in the EU. Then, last but definitely not least, Jeffrey Kretz will give a concrete story of how he and Quid, they grew their company across the EU and across the world, with a special focus on joining guidelines and using an WHO recommendation on that path. Then you'll be provided with a cup of coffee, and I hope you will stay for the final debate, where not only our keynotes on stage, but hopefully all of you will help digesting the impressions from today. We will discuss what have we learned, what is working, what is not working, and what do we do tomorrow. And then, after that, another opportunity for networking. I really hope you will join us outside in the lounge area, where we will meet and greet. All speed talkers, all keynotes will be there and take your questions and open up for new network possibilities. But on this note, welcome, Dr. Moredrik Chibi. Such a pleasure to welcome you here. And you have the word.
Thank you. So I'll be using this, right?
Yes, let's see.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, and your slides are here.
Okay. Right, thank you so much. More and more I'm feeling like I'm part of the Danish society. And I've been here barely 2 years, but I always feel welcome. I've participated in a number of key events that I think they have also shaped who I am up to now, or I've discovered who I am because of the interaction with the Danish ecosystem. My name is Moredrik. I'm a public health innovation lead at WHO in the European region. I spent a couple of years in WHO. I guess it's not so sexy now to talk about WHO, but this is where we are. I started my career in HQ, and I moved to Africa, and where I was heading innovation. Now I'm here in the European region, and I'm always inspired to be part of the innovation space. Because I know innovation is critical, especially in modern public health. And what frustrates me over and over is more also what was being discussed at the opening, this fragmentation, lack of coordination. And the more we now try to make innovation more explicit, more coordinated, we actually are reducing that risk of missed opportunities. In the European region, so I'm not just going to dwell on the European Union. We look after 53 member states. So when I say WHO in the European region, I'm referring to 53 member states. And we see ourselves entrenched in a perma-crisis, as you know, from climate change, health emergencies, demographic shift. And these have exacerbated public health challenges. And as you can imagine, relying on our traditional approach has really failed. It's a new time, it's a new season to bring in fresh ideas like the ones that you have right now, if we really want to tackle head-on some of these challenges. What is fascinating, when I came to join WHO in the European region, I realized that the gap between public health and industry-driven innovation is just widening. And more so, technological platform and capabilities are being unveiled every other day. I was reading exciting news about the Novo Nordisk Foundation health program, where they are trying to come up with a quantum computing, one of the biggest quantum computing, that are going to open unprecedented opportunities for innovation by 2034. So, the question that we always ask ourselves as public health practitioners is, how are we engaged in some of these strategic initiatives and start dialoguing at country level in preparation of what is coming from the horizon? We are seeing disruptions every day. And this is one of my favorite slides, if you are going to quote me. Not because I want to be politically correct, but when I look at what has happened here in Denmark through Novo Nordisk, the discovery of GLP-1 receptor agonist drug, which has revolutionized the clinical management of obesity and diabetes, is unparalleled. And I always tease my colleagues in WHO, if we had known ahead of time, we could have prepared population-level guidance for equitable access. As we are talking right now, not everyone can access this drug. We find ourselves always lagging behind. This is not about the product like GLP agonists. We see this every day with emerging technologies from AI, 3D printing, and organ medicine is going to be a total shift in the next 5 years, where 3D bioprinting is going to take over. As public health practitioners, we are always asking ourselves, how are we beginning to engage ourselves? We know the barriers. And the barriers are not only regulatory. The barriers are about our attitude towards some of these innovations, with social barriers, political barriers, and even literacy around some of these things. How are we beginning to engage our community so that they are prepared for what's coming on the horizon? And it's inevitable, by the way. But I didn't want just to paint a bleak picture. One of the things that I also like to be in this region is we are not starting from a blank slate. And in this room, there are people that I'm going to talk to. We see opportunities to reach out to those what we normally call non-traditional stakeholders that can offer solutions to public health. They are in this room. To what extent have we engaged them? Minimally. Do they know some of our health priority needs. Probably Denmark is an exceptional. But whenever I visit different countries and talk to some of the innovation hubs and science parks, they just say, the Ministry of Health is just an ivory tower. We don't really know their policies, their priorities. If they could engage with us, probably we can shape the destiny in a collaborative manner. And this is why last year in March, we tried this. We said, shall we bring on board the representatives from the innovation hubs, science parks, experts, and also representation from member states. And I'm so happy that Denmark was also represented in this meeting that we had last year in March. Basically to try and crack this, to say, where do you see yourself contributing to public health? It was an amazing, actually it was a wow moment for those 2 days, where representatives from the Innovation Hub were like, if we had known, we could have engaged with policymakers, countries, better. Not only to deliver solutions, but also to contextualize our solutions. And this is a barrier, by the way. It's not just regulatory. If your solution does not meet the contextual need, no matter how shiny it is, it's just a futile exercise. And this is the culture that I strongly believe Diana and colleagues are trying to change the landscape. And through that meeting that I talked about, we started saying, I think we need a strategic framework. We really need to come up with a strategy that all member states, all 53 member states in the European region should align to in terms of harnessing innovation for public health in the European region. And by the way, when I'm talking of public health innovation, I'm not only focusing on digital health, I'm also focusing on other forms of innovation across different domains, be it organizational, technological, scientific, and social. And when we presented this at last year's regional committee, there was unanimous support. It was so inspiring to hear member states echoing that I think as WHO, I think as public health, we are moving in the right direction. Go ahead and develop this regional strategy. So we are in the process of developing this regional strategy that we are going to present at this year's regional committee. And alongside that, we said we can't walk alone. We need to bring on board a technical advisory group that are going to work with us hand in hand to advise us. But not only to advise us on the regional strategy, but also develop an innovation agenda. Because we believe that the innovation strategy is on the what member states can do, what WHO can do, what partners can do. But we also want to hear the how. And the innovation agenda is going to unpack this. And we have had several meetings with these people, sharp people, renowned people that are going to also contribute to driving change in public health innovation. We know the impact. It's not like we don't know the impact. Countries know the impact, especially of digital health innovation. From digital therapeutics for diabetic management, for instance, we are seeing now software-enhanced drugs and acceleration of product development or even drug development through digital health. We're seeing innovative care models as a result of digital health. We're talking of digital twinning now. We're seeing even the financing, innovative financing models being unleashed. We're laughing with my colleague that now universal basic income is becoming more and more popular because of the blockchain enablement. And this is what we want to see at the end of the day for people to access health services or even to access nutritious food for their well-being and their family. And what is also very interesting is these innovations, because they are fragmented the impact is also fragmented. But with digital health colleagues, they did an amazing work. They did a survey in 2002, and they released a report in 2003, just to try and identify some of the foundational aspects for digital health. And I'm just going to run through some few numbers, and I'll urge you to read the report through that QR code. But when they looked at the national digital health governance across all 53 member states, of course, it depends on the number of member states responded to that. Some time can be 52, some time can be 51, but the 83% of member states have some sort of a national digital health policy or strategy. But the number dropped in terms of having a dedicated institution or a government agency for monitoring digital health adoption. And funding, they kind of claim that there is some sort of funding around digital health programs. But in terms of digital health literacy, it plummeted to 52%. And you can write a story about this, that literacy and digital health adoption go hand in hand. But there was a study, which also I found very interesting, when there was a study on AI adoption. They actually said illiterate people have a tendency of even adopting AI-related products much faster, much higher than those that claim to be illiterate. Simply because that's the explanation. They think AI is a magic box. But still, that is very risky. When it comes to electronic health records, just indicate to me with 5 minutes. I'll be done by then. Electronic medical records or health record, 80% of them have some sort of either national EHR system or interconnected regional EHR. So I've given you that QR code so that you can actually read this report at your leisure. Same as mHealth. 91% of some of the member states have at least one government-sponsored mHealth program. 67 of them have established some sort of mHealth services providing access to electronic health records. And 15%, of course, having some evaluation mechanism around it. Big data analytics, this is the lowest. I would love you to read about it. And access to and sharing of data. Of course, they said 100% of member states have some sort of, they have passed privacy legislation, but 91 of them have legislation to protect privacy of health-related data in electronic health record system. So you can actually see there are different areas where there is high performance and also low performance. But the overarching message for me is when it comes to digital health, there are 5 really core pillars that we encourage member states to strengthen. Establishing effective governance, evaluation guidelines, sustainable financing, interoperability, and patient-centered care. And of course, digital inclusion. And my last slide, we have addressed that, but I also fundamentally think that all what I've said above is useless if we don't reimagine our partnership. I want to see countries articulating demand on needs-driven innovation. I want to see countries identifying this digital health solution. It's not about you trying to find how I can scale up innovation. It it must be matched with the needs. It must be matched with the demand. And there must be a mechanism of scaling those innovations in a sustainable way. And there also a monitoring and evaluation mechanism. And this is why hats off to Diana and colleagues in coming up with a Lighthouse Life Sciences initiative. And this is the only way we can deliver public health impact, we can deliver health to all. I thank you so much. I hope you heard. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Modric. If you please, Modric, we have 5 minutes for questions or comments.
Oh, yes, yes.
If any of you have any questions or comments for Modric or thoughts about what he just presented, the view across Europe in digital health, public health?
Answers that I don't know, I'll refer you to my regional director, to my boss. No, I'm just but in any case, I'll be around to mingle and we can always have offline discussions.
Yes, yeah. Definitely. Thank you so much for this overview.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And on today's path from the great overview down towards the concrete, I now have the big pleasure to present to you Yvette Roque, who is a psychiatrist and app developer at the DGGC Centraal in Holland. She's also the project manager of the Super Project, and she will present brand new findings from this project that has focused on adapting digital health solutions across countries in the EU. So, welcome, Yvette. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the Danish Life Science Cluster in Lundbeck for co-hosting us. And I'm really glad to tell you something about our Super project today. It's a real advantage for me to be here on stage, but of course I'm not alone, and I will introduce my other partners to you in a minute. Super stands for Successful User Participation, Examples and Recommendations in Digital Mental Health. It's a big mouthful, but a nice way to say it. It's super. In the photograph you see our first event. It's like 1.5 years ago, September 2023. It was in Amersfoort, the Netherlands. And you see our Danish partners, Christian and Søren, from the Center of Digital Psychiatry. We have Tom and Sylvie from Belgium, Antwerp, of Thomas More High School of Applied Sciences. And of course my colleague Jolanda, who's in front here, of GGZ Centraal. It's a large mental health institute of the Netherlands where we both work. I want, before I go to the next slide, have a special thanks to Femke Boersma. Femke, you're right there. She's our advisor from Interreg Noordzee, and she has provided us with a lot of advice and fun and knowledge about how Interreg Noordzee works. And of course, we're really happy that you provided us the opportunity to do this project. So, before I will talk about what I will tell you today, I first want to stress that there's a really big problem in mental health. 25% of all people suffer from a mental health illness somewhere in their life. Well, if you think about it, it's a quarter of us here in the room. And if you don't yourself have a mental health problem, then you probably know somebody you love who has a mental health issue. On top of that, 75% of all the people that gain a mental health illness do so before the age of 25. So this is a problem, really, also for the young people. And you can imagine that this has an impact on our societies. And it's really another big issue that in most European countries we have enormous waiting lists for mental health. So not everybody has access to that. So I'm really happy to present kind of a small solution to that with technical digital innovations for mental health, bridging a part of this gap. So I will tell you something about the what and the why of the Super Project, the lessons we learned, of course, I will do that. We learned a lot of lessons. And I'll end with our recommendations and closing in questions and presenting our guideline, which we made in the project. Well, the why of the Super Project. We will help to ensure better and more user-centered digital tools for mental health in Europe. It was your 5th point, I think, and this is something I really have a big heart for. We want to make user-centered tools. So if you transnationally scale something, you have to do so by involving your end users, because if you don't do that, it won't succeed. We also wanted to make sure that there was a better use of already existing solutions, best practices. Every country has their best practices, and it's really a shame that we don't take advantage of that across the borders. So maybe in the super project we can learn how to scale up our best practices and have its advantages in the other countries. And I already talked about the other why of the super project, bridging the gap in mental health. So what did we promise? When we started a long time ago, it was just, of course, theoretical. We wanted to have a ground to do things, so we promised a lot of things, and I think maybe we were a bit sorry at some times that we had made these big promises, but we said we develop a guideline for user participation. Well, check, we did that. We also said we are testing this guideline ourselves with piloting 2 best practices from one country to another, and I will tell you something about these best practices in a bit. And we would also say we established an expert pool, because if we're talking about making a guideline, we don't do it for ourselves. We have to know the challenges and the needs of our end users, the ones using our guideline. So we said we would find at least 50 expert pool members to be joining us on this quest to make a guideline. And we did so. At the beginning of the project, we already had 66 expert pool members of health organizations, SMEs, NGOs, patient federations in 8 European different countries and 2 non-European countries, helping us, telling us what they wanted in the guideline, but also during making of the guideline gave us feedback, and also at the end. So it's really a collaborative guideline that we developed. We also said we do 2 events. Now, you saw the photograph of the event in Amersfoort, and today we're standing here at the closing event, so check on that box. The last box we didn't check. We had only one academic article already be published, but the second is being written up by Sylvie primarily and will be submitted, I think, in a week or 2. So I'm really proud of us already. We applied design thinking also for the making of this guideline. And we did so because design thinking is a method in which user needs and challenges are put central. And you go to the different stages of empathizing, defining, ideating, prototyping, testing, and do it all over again from the beginning until you're satisfied with your product. So this is also the method we used in the creating of our guideline. The best practices we included. Well, the first one is the one I'm also talking about in the speed talks, and something I'm really proud about. It's our SAM, the Stress Autism Mate. It's an app from the Netherlands, developed in total co-creation with people with autism. And this app is freely available in 33 countries and 7 languages at the moment. So we had a lot of experience with scaling up the Stress Autism Mate. It's scientifically validated already, and it's free for everybody to use. So it's also free in Denmark for everybody to use. So the SAM app went from the Netherlands to Denmark, where it wasn't available at the time of the start of the project. And then we had the pleasure of meeting up with the other best practice, a best practice from Denmark. It's the SAFE app. It's an app made in total co-creation with people who self-harm, with relatives of people who self-harm, and with clinicians that work with people who self-harm. And the app developer, Leen Bering, is present at the moment. Hi, Leen. And she was so kind to involve her app in this project, the super project, and had also ambitions to go abroad with this app to another country. Both apps differ a lot because the SAM app, there is language in the SAM app, but not that much because it is an intervention app. The SAFE app contains a lot of language because it's all about journal articles, information on self-harm. It contains a lot of videos, and it's really also situational and content-wise in the regions of Denmark. So in every region you go to a different point of help. So it's really a totally different app. The SAM app had experience already with translating and upscaling, whereas the Save app didn't have that. So it's really interesting to have two completely different apps, but still, it could also be VR or wearable, so it's just coincident that there were two apps, but they were really different in a way. So Save went through the Netherlands. The first stage we did was, of course, the empathize phase. We need to understand our users. We needed to understand if there was a need for people in Denmark with autism to have the help of a SAM app. And we also needed to know whether the people in the Netherlands were looking forward to having an app to inform them about self-harm. Well, thankfully, there was the need, so the project didn't stop right there. And we did this and established that need. What we learned was that for us at GGZ Centraal, we already had access to a lot of clinicians. So that was really easy for us. We needed clinicians and patients and relatives who dealt with self-harm to talk to. Well, I'm a psychiatrist at the Institute. Yolanda works at the Institute, so we thought, well, this is really easy. So we already have a lineup of colleagues who want to collaborate with us on this matter. So that was totally different for our Danish colleagues because they didn't have an autism ward at their center. So they needed to establish the context from the beginning and needed to know what is this with autism, how do you engage with people with autism. So it was a really different way to start. Then we went to the next phase, the define phase. And then in this phase, we made sure we had a deeper understanding of the needs of our users. And then we learned already a really lot of things. For us, for the Save app, bringing it to the Netherlands, we learned there was a problem with the terminology in the Save app because it says self-harmer all the time. And in Dutch, this is like a stigmatizing way to talk about people who self-harm. We say people who self-harm. So the clinicians at our center said, well, we don't want to give the app like this to the people because when you talk about self-harmer, well, it's not a very good way to describe them. So we needed to change that. Then the SAM app, we learned that the Danish translation was way too formal. So it needed to be much more informal than it was already. So we need to change that as well. On to the next stage, we learned also about other cultural differences and also we went to the ideate phase and then we started to brainstorm about how to go about this. And of course we ran into a lot of translation issues as well because we thought it would be nice to try two different sets of translations. So the SAM app in Denmark was human translated with paid translation people. This was really easy because they had the information. But the SAM app was also prepared for that because we already did these translations, so we had the right files and it was really easy to do that, I think. The main problem was that the paid translation people, of course, didn't know about mental health. So this was something to take into account if you are translating a digital mental health solution. Most of the time the translators aren't from mental health, so they don't know about the right language. For the Save app, we thought about translating it with AI. We thought that was really a good idea to try two different methods. So with the paid AI account, we started translating the Save app. But then we ran across the first barrier, and that was the content of the Save app needed to be extracted from the app. And that takes a lot of work. And you need to do that in the right way, because if you don't do it in the right way, and I can tell you we didn't do it in the right way, then you get that all the text is springing all the time. I don't know how you say it correctly in English, but I was the person, the human person who checked the AI translation. And I'm sorry I volunteered for that job, because it was really, really a lot of text, and AI didn't do a good job at translating it. Cut off sentences, it doubled things, so it took a lot of time to correct that. And if you are translating something, I think you need to think up front about the way to do it and maybe spend some more money up front and save a lot of time, which saves a lot of money if you do it with AI. And I think you can do it with AI if the text is easy and simple, and if you have structured it right. Then, in the Safe app, we already also had the big challenge of all the videos present in there, because it's a really beautiful app. People who self-harm can look at a video and try to engage with something else, so don't think about the self-harm, and also relatives or clinicians can seek up information. But all these videos were in Danish. So how do you put that content then into the Dutch situation? You have to translate all that videos. And we tried also with AI. And I must say, it's not beautiful, but you really understand the Dutch in the videos. So if you don't have a lot of money to do so, you can easily do it with AI. It's understandable, it's fine. And we in the prototyping and testing phase, we also realized that it was good enough for the people in the Netherlands. Okay. Then, onto the next phase, the prototype phase. We turned ideas into tangible models. So we did so with low fidelity and high fidelity models. And here there was a big hiccup for the GGZ Centraal team in the Netherlands. Because when we thought we had a head up with knowing the clinicians and having it easy, with easy access to patients and relatives, it turned out to be not that good an idea to do it that way, because our clinicians were really reluctant to have us having contact with the relatives and the clients ourselves. So they were protecting them like crazy, so we couldn't get near them. So we had to do this by distance, remote, online, with questionnaires. So in first hand, we had a target group of clinicians who we could see who interacted with our models, but the clients and the relatives we couldn't see, and we just gained information in a questionnaire. And that's very less rich information than the Danish team had with the SAM app. They had a lot of effort establishing the context with people with autism, clinicians who work with people with autism, but they gained live vision of the interaction with the prototype. So they had a lot of more information to share. So if I can recommend something, I would always recommend now, and I know now, you need to go out there, you need to establish your connections, and you need to take the time to do that. And it will cost you time, it will cost you money, but it will deliver you far much rich information at the end. So this is also a big learn we had. And also we learned with the SAM app that the clinicians working with people with autism didn't want to give the SAM app to their clients also. They needed to have more action detailed information into the tip section. So in the SAM app, it's an app that releases and helps you gain less daily stress. And the SAM app gives you tips to reduce your stress. But they're really generic tips, and people can also personalize these tips. But one tip can be go outside for a walk. But in the Danish version, the clinician said that's far too broad. You have to say, put on your jacket, put on your shoes, walk out the door, go outside for a walk. So, and this really helped us too, because due to the feedback of the Danish user testing, we changed it also for the Dutch content, and it made it a better app. Also, the distinction of the buttons wasn't really, it was suitable for the Dutch population, but the Danish population said, well, we wanted more distinction of the buttons so we can easily see where to press. But it was also a good idea to do for the Dutch situation. And I think it worked the same way around with the Safe app, because we found some other things in there to be fitted. And also the Safe app had taken advantage of this to be also a better version because of the detailed testing we did in the Netherlands. Another obstacle we observed is that the Danish mental health system and the Dutch mental health system, they are different, of course. Where in Denmark, you have all these regional help posts. If you self-harm, you can go there and then you get help. In the Netherlands, it's not like that. In the Netherlands, you go to a general practitioner, and the general practitioner will call the acute mental health service that is available at the moment. So you don't have the opportunity to advise for help nearby or whatever. So we had to change that also in the Dutch version. So the Dutch version had to be cloned. So the total app had to be cloned to make another version. Whereas in SAM, we just added another language in the portal. We ourselves own at GGZ Centraal. So that's really different. We also own the people who work. No, we don't own the people who work there, but you understand, we pay them. So it doesn't matter if they spend hours on changing the content of the SAM app. Whereas for SAFE it's different, because the Center of Digital Psychiatry isn't the owner of the SAFE app. So they had to discuss, of course, what kind of work could be put into changing these things. Okay, now the prototyping went really well. Then we did the testing phase with all the correct feedback in SAFE, the correct feedback in SAM, and we learned that for both apps, they were successfully adapted to the other cultural environment. So, and all these lessons learned, we put in the guideline. And I think that's really worth, if you are doing something like this, you don't have to do the mistakes we made together. The key considerations, the take-home message was: conduct thorough market research, do collaborate with local experts. Also, if you think you know them, please do and make these collaborations really strong. Apply design thinking, because it was a really good way to transnational scale this. Allocate sufficient time for translation and local adaptation. I think especially the translation part was really, really difficult. Clarify your expectations to the intended users, and of course, you have to look at financial, legal, and local health legislation to be considered. So we did that also at the beginning of the project. The SAM app went through Mind apps to be tested, and the SAFE app underwent a similar testing thing within our organization, GGZ Centraal. So now I'm at the end of my presentation, and I want to show you, where is it? Is it gone? Oh no, here. Look, we have for everybody a nice book. It's kind of an IKEA guide, we hope to be. It's a guide for user participation, and well, every phase has its own written things we learned and a checklist you need to do. So this is the guideline we made in co-creation with all the expert pool members, who we really acknowledge for all the work they have put into it. So if you want to have the guideline, you can scan the QR code, then you have it digitally. And I would really like to thank you for your attention. And have a nice day today.
Thank you so much, Yvette. Excellent presentation. We do have time for any questions or comments, thoughts you might have. There's one here, but we need the mic to wander all the way. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Andreas Dam from HealthBuddy. Thank you very much for your presentation and nice work. I very much agree to involvement of patients in the developing these products. So I have several questions. One of them being, do you think we need this kind of design thinking approach every time we want to go to scale to another country?
Yes, I think so. That's my personal opinion. I think it's so really important to involve users, end users in every step, because we know from research that if you don't do it and tailor it not to their needs, they won't use it. So you can have perfect solutions, but if they don't fit the user needs and challenges, nobody will use it. And if you do this like this, then your users are your best ambassadors as well. So the implementation process will be will be smoother.
So maybe just to reflect a bit on that, if we look, let's say, outside of healthcare, we have seen many, let's say, global digital providers scale globally without, for me, doing this kind of bottom-up innovation approach in every single market. So I'm just curious if we are trying to use a product development process to fix an implementation challenge, or we really need so different products in each market. And if we go with the approach that we need to really do this bottom up in every country, how do you envision that we can navigate, let's say, 50 or 100 countries' different needs in one product across the globe? Or do you not see at all a way forward to globally scale these solutions?
Wow, that's a lot of questions here. I'll try to give an answer to the question. Well, I think some needs are universal. And we saw with the SAM app and with the SAFE app, there was a universal need. And I think strong ideas are about universal needs. So I think we really need to change the game and be far more bottom-up. But on the other hand, of course, some ideas can also be more top-down, but you can include user involvement. But for me, I think I would say bottom-up is the best way to go. But we're not fit to do that in a way. I think mental health has to make a big change as well. Far more peer-to-peer support. Far more with people with lived experiences instead of top-down already also from the beginning. So I think we are at a stage that things have to shift. Things have to shift.
Thank you so much, Yvette. I think we have time for one more, maybe too short, but let's see.
Yeah. Hello. This is working? Yeah. My name is Jorgen Kilscott. I just have a comment for this. So I think there's two ways to look at it. It could either be like UI, UX working differently, but what about the content? Because I think these are two different things. I think you could work with a sort of optimal UX, UI, but do you think that it's the content and the more customized content or personalized content in different countries that actually are the differences? The workflow and content is one side. The UX, UI, I mean the buttons, if they're like gray or green or something like that, may not be that important. I mean, I think people could adapt to that, but I mean, personalized content I think is really important. So what is your stake on that?
I agree with you, but for people with autism, it is really important what kind of buttons it is or are. So the UX and the usability is key for people with autism. So if you don't do it with having that right, they won't use your device, but maybe that's purely an autism, I don't know. I think content-wise, the people who you make your solution for, they need to be in control of the content you put into the app. Because if I had developed the Stress Autism Mate with my own ideas about stress, it would be a totally different device. So they surprised me a lot during our journey in co-creating together, that there needed to be really different content in there than I would have thought of up front. So, and I can imagine this is for every solution, that the people using your solution, they are the people needing to put the content in there. And sometimes this can be really country specific or region specific, but for other problems it can be really somehow the same. Like in SAM, in the 30 countries, the content-wise it's the same, but the language is culturally adaptable in formal, non-formal. Like in Australia, it's like killing yourself if you go on a bicycle, so we had to put not the tip in there, go ride on your bike. So it's the little things, not the big things.
One final question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think maybe a solution for both also to develop for the future is that this is the guideline for user participation, and it's also about how do you make a certain application adaptable in a certain country with a certain culture. But I think you can also use specific design guidelines, for instance, modular creation or stuff. So you, when developing an app or application or a use where you already keep in mind you have to could be used in the whole of Europe, how do you keep in mind with the development so text can be adjustable easy, or images or video images, and then you have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, to think up front in preparing it for multiple language and multiple content.
Yeah, to think up front, but maybe also make a guideline for it from the EU, that if you're developing something for mental digital health, it has to be applied to those guidelines. And then you tackle that problem.
So we could do a
Yeah,
follow-up
one-on-one.
project.
No, but if you see the difference between the SAFE app and the
Yeah.
Autism SAM app, the one is much more easier to translate to another country than the other.
Yeah,
And then that's only the basic of the design guidelines.
that's true.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Yvette. Thank you, everybody, for the excellent questions. Now, things will hopefully get even more lively. This is a part of the program that I personally have been looking forward to. We have done you a favor and prepared 6 different talks that you have the opportunity to attend today. So if I could invite the 6 speed talkers to the stage and a mic, I will now introduce you to this format that sounds more complicated than it is in practice. These six generous people are all doing this scaling right now. And they have agreed to join us today and share with us their experience. They have promised me to share both the positive and negative experiences trying to scale a digital solution across the EU. So now, in a minute, they will all present a 1-minute pitch to you, hoping to share their experience with you. And when they have done that, they will leave this stage and go outside to the lounge area. In the lounge areas, there are 6 stands, and each of them have a stand. You can see the number of their stands here. It starts on the left with number 1 and goes around clockwise to number 6 in the middle. Your problem is, as I told you before, and you have maybe looked at the back on the program, you can only get to listen to 3 of these talks. Each of these kind people will give the same talk 3 times. So you have the opportunity to hear 3 of the talks. The way the format will go is that when these quick pitches are given, we will start the music, and the music will be playing for 2 minutes. Then there will be 10 minutes of silence, at least from the music, and they will have 10 minutes to present the talk. Then suddenly the music will start playing again, and you all will know that this means it's time to find your next talk. Then the music will play for 2 minutes, and your next talk will begin. And we will repeat that for a final time. So you have the time for 3 talks. And when the music plays the final time, it's actually the cue for you to get lunch. The lunch would also be presented outside in the lounge area. And we will have about an hour for lunching and networking. And then when that hour has passed, 3 minutes before the program starts again, we'll play some more music, and you'll know it's about time to get in here again. But now, I have the pleasure and honor of introducing you to today's speed talkers. And we have number 1, 1-minute pitch.
Yes, the clock is ticking. Thank you for being here today and discussing this important topic. I'm Andreas. I'm the CEO and founder of HealthBuddy. I have grown some gray hair, and that's because I've worked with healthcare and digital innovation since I graduated. Today I will talk about RheumaBuddy, which is a tool for people with rheumatoid arthritis, also including some mental support. And it's scaled in 32 countries and 8 languages and serving around 27,000 patients today across Europe. And I would like to tell about how we did that myself and half a colleague of mine. So it was a very small team, and we had to think quite creatively. Thank you.
Thank you. And DigiRehab?
Thanks a lot. Niels Højer, DigiRehab. DigiRehab is a platform that enables caregivers to give physical strength training to elderly that they're visiting, so that they can become stronger, they can become less reliant on help from the municipalities. We thought that this was easy to scale up to the rest of Europe. It's not that easy. Going south of the border is terrible. So that's what I'm going to pitch a little about. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. And now, Heka VR.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Leander and I'm Chief Commercial Officer for Heka VR. We do immersive therapy for severe mental health disorders and specifically psychosis and schizophrenia. We're tackling a conservative space with a highly digital solution, and it's taken us 4 years to get the clinical results that we need to scale. So if you want to know what you do in those 4 years to make sure that you're ready and survive at the same time, come listen to me.
Yes. Monsenso.
My name is Nana Iversen. I'm with Monsanto, COO. We have been around for 10 years. We came out of a research from the IT University here in Copenhagen. My headline is How Did We Get Out of Here? Covering how we have approached a lot of research projects, building a network, getting the compliance things aligned, and how we managed to scale that into a lot of different countries.
Thank you so much. And metro mapping.
Hello. I'm Joris. I'm a designer, and I'm today here for metro mapping. And we productized a method, service design method for creating care paths in healthcare. And we also do it in the Lillebæk Hospital here in Denmark. They use metro mapping. And I think the most important in our scalability process was that we didn't scale it ourselves, but the community using it. So if you want to know how we did that, then...
And a familiar face? Yes.
Hi, in 2018 I lost a young man of autism on the stress of daily life. Together with 15 clients we joined forces and we built the SAM app. With their embracing of the community and guiding of the community, we developed it, and being it available in 33 countries and 7 languages at the moment. Our biggest challenge is to be free, so that nobody has to pay for it. So financial sustainability, this is what I will tell you about how we did that. So come join me in my corner.
Thank you so much. So now we will start the music, and you have 2 minutes to find your first talk. And you have 2 minutes to find your stands. Good luck, everybody. Enjoy. I think we will get started. And I hope you all had a great lunch and talked to some interesting people. I did. Now we are continuing our journey into the specifics of scaling digital health, but this time from another route. We have a very exciting talk from an expert who will give an insight into the increased standardization of digital health across borders with a specific EU angle. And we will learn how far along the EU is on this domain, and hopefully we as providers of digital health will also get some inspiration and insight into what we can gain from working with the standards. So it's a great pleasure to say welcome to Petra Hogendown. She's a leading expert in health app assessment and also a leading expert in the Label2Enable project. And she will give a talk now. Welcome, Petra.
It works now, right? I hear myself. Nice. Thank you for the invitation, first of all. So my name is indeed Petra Hogendoorn, and I'll tell a bit more about Label2Enable, the project, and ISO 82304 Part 2, which is a mouthful, but it's about quality and reliability in health and wellness apps. In short, what is the problem that we're trying to tackle is that choosing a good health app is quite difficult. The order in the App Store doesn't say anything about quality. The user ratings don't say anything about quality either. And the ranking, similar thing, doesn't say anything about quality. So how do you pick one when you have all these nice, colorful tiles is quite a difficult thing to do. Delivering a good health app as a manufacturer is actually quite difficult too. The picture you see here is how many different assessment frameworks are there according to a previous project, mHealth Hub. How do you comply with all of those? If you want to get reimbursed, that's quite a challenge too. Germany is considered the front runner, and now some 60 apps are reimbursed, the ones with green around it permanently, the ones with a cross not anymore, and the ones without anything temporarily. Belgium was considered the second front runner until recently had one app reimbursed. Currently it's 7. And France is again seen as one of the front runners. And I'm waiting for the list of French apps who are currently reimbursed either temporarily or permanently. This research says the same thing. So this is what the reimbursement situation is like throughout Europe. So Germany, France, and Belgium are considered front runners, and the rest of us are runners up, if you want to call it that way. But it does show that this is quite a difficult situation. If you look at it, how much is actually being scaled, I looked up for each of these apps, where are they originally from? So you can see in Germany reimbursed apps are actually most of them are German, with a few exceptions. In Belgium, most of them are Belgian. So we have still quite some way to go. So how to adapt and scale digital health solutions across Europe? Let's try and see as well what a US specialist in this field said. So this is David Bates. He's a professor from the US, from Harvard. He actually proposed a label in 2018 in JAMA, and he proposed a few more things, like providing more rigorous and standardized evaluation, requiring the FDA to review apps, increase federal support for research on the outcomes, and hence open interoperable APIs. So how do you connect apps to electronic health records? And part of this is suggestions are indeed a label. This is actually work from the WHO, which was referenced as well this morning. Quite similar. It also says how we should consider making evaluation quite normal, the norm, and use a standardized way in achieving that, looking at things like safety and reliability, quality, etc., and use those outcomes as well for how do you fund apps, and continue to emphasize the importance of mHealth. So this is ISO TS 82304 Part 2, the cover at least. There's some 90 pages behind it. And in short, it's the EU energy label, but then for health apps. So you see on the left A to E, A being the best score, E being the worst score possible in different fields, which are displayed in a label. So it's a score, and the label then says what's the app, what's the name of the app, which platforms is it on, so the App Store, Google Play Store, web app, who made it, what's the benefit of the app, when should you first consult a doctor before you use it, and then 4 scores, healthy and safe, easy to use, secure data, and robust build, which add up to this overall score at the bottom, and it says when it was done. And I think you will know some of the inspirators who are actually quite effective in what they're doing, like the EU Energy Label, Nutri-Score, and the FDA over-the-counter drugs label. So similar to the energy label, where you have a score, a label, which then adds, sort of the most detailed version is a product information sheet, and we created something similar. And the interesting thing for me was the EU label is already something, the energy label for all of Europe with its 27 countries, but actually almost 60 countries outside of it have something quite similar, which shows that the idea behind it actually works throughout the world. So some of the things we did, going back to the reimbursement, we had within the Label2Enable project 135 people from 34 countries looking into why is reimbursement so difficult? Why is it so much lagging behind? And our main finding was an app is not a pill. And we look at an app as if it is a pill, but there are quite a lot of differences as to the value it can create and the surrounding it needs to create that value. So it reminded me a lot about the American saying which says, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to believe its whole life it's stupid. So we need to value an app as an app and not as a pill. And we hope that the work that this has been done, that will help different countries in the next steps, because this is again from the WHO, we're lagging behind, and it would be a good thing if we scale. And AIM is an organization for insurers throughout Europe, and from what I've been told, they're now creating a positioning statement where they say, please build on the work that has been done here for their insurers throughout Europe. So the assessment framework, it's an assessment framework with 81 requirements who build up to these 4 overall scores, has already been adopted by Australia. If an A2304 Part 2 assessment has been done, you qualify for a reduced assessment. To us, it was also interesting to see how did they adapt. So they made it a bit, they took out a few things, but they also added a few things like, did you take into account Torres Strait Islander people and Aboriginal people, specific very much to the Australian context, but also something similar Yvette mentioned. Even though we're quite closer, there are differences between Denmark and the Netherlands. I read through the recommendations that you had out of this project, and I think they quite align with this slide, which I didn't know the results yet when I created this, but these are some of the requirements that are in A2304 Part 2 that actually go towards how should you adapt. So one of the things that we changed during the project is the health app appropriate given the intended user diversity? Originally, it was only age appropriate. With the learnings from, for example, the Aboriginals, but also the work that we did within the Label2Enable project, we changed that and we give quite specific guidance. How do you do that? How do you make it, how do you take into account gender, age, and cultural differences? Is the health app design based on an explicit understanding of users, tasks, and environment? Is quite something that you had in your first steps as well. So before you create the app, how do you engage with users? During creating the app is the 5322. Are intended users involved throughout design and development of the health app? 5323 is the design of the health app driven and refined by user-centered evaluation. So when you've finished it, do you test it? And 5328, once it's on the market, do you also find out what the usability is and do you make changes accordingly? And the final one, 5216, are health professionals involved in the development of the health app? And again, how do they endorse the medical or health content? So do they agree? And if they are not European, do you have a robust rationale why it's still applicable? So there are differences and we should take them into account. Catalonia is the first one to adopt in Europe, and they looked into their own framework, which they had since 2017, and saw, okay, what are our requirements, 120 of them, what are the 81 requirements from A2304 Part 2, and where do they align? In the end, they found that they can do 93% of their assessment with A2304 Part 2, only 7% is context-specific. They saw that there was an overlap initially of 48%, so almost half of the requirements were both in A2304 Part 2 and their own framework. And they found that the 39% requirements that were not in their own framework, but were in A2304 Part 2, were all relevant to Catalonia, so they adopted them all. Out of the 13% of Catalonia, which is their authorities called FTSS, part of it was adopted in our handbook. As a next step, we're now comparing with UNETA Core Model, which is European Health Technology Assessment, and DIGA, and a few others, to see again on a requirement level where is the overlap. So far, preliminary results, there's a lot. A health app quality is not that different from one country to another. I've started looking at the latest from Denmark. So far, again, it seems that there's quite a bit of overlap, but need to fill in. This picture is, in particular, as you saw, Germany is the front runner, and my message has been, if you're Germany and you have 83 million people, you can have your own rigorous framework. But most of the countries in Europe are quite a lot smaller than that, actually all of the countries. Germany is the biggest. And if you have your own framework, then you're not very interesting from a manufacturer perspective. And it might not also be interesting to create a version in your language, because it's not just the authorities that are small, but languages can be quite small as well. And Finland actually did a check, and they saw that although worldwide there are some 350,000 apps, health and wellness apps, when you narrow it down to how many of them are available in Finnish, it's actually quite small. So because of equity, it is also a good thing to scale. And I think over time, with some inspiration from one of my previous employer, we will see that there will be an even bigger overlap. My first employer was KLM, Royal Dutch Airlines, and that's a business where you need to cut money from time to time. And at some point, somebody said, are we so special that we have to ask Boeing to build in our own KLM-specific pantry? Or are we actually quite similar to most other airlines, and we can do with the regular Boeing pantry, which actually has probably a lot more innovation as well to it. In the end, KLM decided on the Boeing pantry. So I think over time we will see that there is more overlap than differences, although I agree that specifically on the cultural things there, it's good to be mindful. When it comes to scaling, what we've done a lot is looking into multi-stakeholder needs. And you see in this picture, which was the basis for our project, why? Because we need manufacturers to build and improve the quality of apps, because we need app checkers to certify them, we need the authorities to adopt the label and reimburse apps, we need the doctors to recommend apps using the label, and we need app stores to store apps and display the label, and in the end we would like the patients or citizens, all of us actually, to consider to use apps using the label. So you need to look at what are their individual needs and how do we make sure that it works. And one of the things that we saw, which brings me back to the reimbursement, is we asked both health app developers and authorities, what are you willing to pay for when it comes to a health app assessment? And this, the big bar in the middle, as you can see, is guideline integration and procurement or reimbursement. If there's a chance of being reimbursed and being part of regular clinical pathways, then there's an interest and to be assessed and to pay for it. We co-created a handbook app assessment based on ISO 82304 Part 2 with 24 apps, their manufacturers, and 5 conformity assessment bodies from 5 countries, intentionally to see whether we could succeed towards, it doesn't matter whether you first get assessed in Italy or France or Canada or the UK or Spain, we can all get the same results and create the handbook that works for these assessors and the manufacturers. And Jeffrey will tell a bit more, perhaps, being one of these 24 apps. So with all these learnings, we created a handbook which was based on 82304 Part 2, which was already based on 28 international and European standards, and we amplified that a bit. The testing, as I mentioned, we aligned with EU level legislation, healthcare professional needs, what do they need to support prescriptions. We did a comparative analysis with more frameworks, and we used scientific research on quality and risks and subject matter experts, and especially for things like the guidelines that you created, we could not rely on legislation or standardization because it's not there. So then we looked into the literature, so it's interesting to see what else I can find in the booklets. As a next step, how to scale, one of the things that we said are very important is what can you do in automated assessment? Because if there are so many apps and if they change as often, if you want it to be scalable, affordable, efficient, etc., you need to look into automated tooling. Healthcare professional needs. This is the health app quality report that we created, or part of it. It has different layers, so now you can see one layer open. So we co-created that with healthcare professionals. We looked into the European Society of Cardiology into different types of apps for different intended uses in different types of diagnosis. And they, in the end, also said we need something that is standardized to scale recommendations for health apps or prescriptions. And what we saw is that their needs were all part of the 82304 Part 2 assessment framework. With authorities, we looked into, and these were Italy and Catalonia, we looked into what are their needs, what are their jobs to be done when it comes to integrating health apps, and what are their pains and their gains in attaining that, and is there a fit with the work that we've done, so with the different products and services that we have, and what are the different elements that actually contribute to those gains and relieve those pains. And it all starts with quality apps for use, and that means that you need to start with assessments to ultimately also get data-driven decision-making in healthcare. Again, from the WHO report, you see the importance of doing these assessments. So these were the barriers to mHealth integration into clinical practice that the authorities saw: privacy and security, trustworthiness, effectiveness, patient digital literacy. But the first three are assessment. And with patient digital literacy, you can look into how can you create easy-to-use apps. We assessed in 4 countries, 4 corners of Europe, understandability and actionability of the label. So the label will evolve a bit probably. That's being finalized still. We created a multi-stakeholder roadmap. How do we get to the preferred future of health and care in 5 to 10 years? And the role of digital health quality labeling in it, again with the different stakeholders involved. And finally, almost finally, back to what this Harvard professor said, Professor Bates. One of the last things he said, we need to enhance open interoperable exchange between health apps and electronic health records. That's where the European health data space is working at. So the idea is that there will be more patient-provided data into the electronic health records. And part of the EHDS regulation is Article 47, which concerns labeling wellness applications, for which 82304 Part 2 and the work we did in Label2Enable are the basis. And these are some of the things that are in Annex 2. So if you claim interoperability as a wellness application, you need to comply with the requirements in Annex 2. And if you look at those at the right, the way they are in the legislation, and on the left, the 4 different elements, then you can see quite the overlap. There's a focus on security and interoperability, but it's interesting to see how the others play out. So that was it, I think. I made it, right?
Yes, yes.
Good.
In excellent time. And we do have time for any questions, comments, reflections from you. Yes? We have a gentleman here.
I think it's very good to have like a common theme
Sorry, it's being recorded. We need the microphone for the recording.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. It's good to see that there are some common standards maybe coming into place. I'm just curious about, the small startups. We have like one here with 2 founders sitting there, and they're doing excellent work and have a really good app. I mean, are we in a risk of kind of killing these companies before they even start flourishing?
Good question. Actually, I initiated 2 health apps in oncology. So, and I know from experience what it's like to start an app. We did the testing intentionally with a lot of startups, with smaller companies, and we wanted to make sure that you wouldn't need a consultant, which is again a cost, to be able to do it. Also, we try to create a guidance on what is quality in a health app. When we started, it was a bit difficult to find that kind of guidance. At least that's what was my experience when I started. I, for example, went to the Dutch Cancer Institute and said, okay, I'm going to do research. What do you want me to research so that you'll accept it afterwards? And they didn't have a clue. So we're trying to, with all the Delphi study that we did, with looking into 26 existing frameworks, with testing for the Dutch government, etc., we created the framework which is intended to enable manufacturers to build in quality from the start and show it. So how do you stand out of the crowd is really difficult when there are 350,000 and the App Store doesn't have this booking.com-like this is the patient, this is the whatever type of characteristic is important to choose. So we are hoping to actually benefit the manufacturers. That's what it was intended to do, also by the EU. But perhaps Jeffrey can sort of recommend something as well from his perspective.
There's a question here. There, okay. Many questions now.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Julia. I'm from Hedia. It's a diabetes scale-up app. I very much would value or welcome what you do. This initiative sounds great for us. And actually, the opposite of the last question here in the room, I see a lot of business value in this because we do have competitors from Eastern European country that does not follow the regulations of getting through the MDR approvals as we have. So how can we become a bit more practical, and how could I leverage this today?
Good one. Yeah, no, we're now the project has stopped. We're still finalizing some articles, just as we heard from you. And we're awaiting the next steps from the EU, but if you contact me later, then I can connect you. And from our perspective, we have a working handbook now, but we would like to have sort of a demonstrator phase in which we show, okay, we've learned all of this during the project. Can we have a group of apps where we can show it works with all the learnings that we have? So if you're interested, please contact. Yeah. I'll be here.
I have a brief follow-up question, Petra.
Yeah.
If you had to give an ambitious but realistic bet on when we had European standards, when would that be?
What I'm hoping for is that the current geopolitical situation will actually push the EU towards, I don't want to be dependent on big tech in the US and big tech on China, so I need to make sure that my European manufacturers are supported in scaling and creating a supply that is interesting. That is my hope. And we've seen in COVID that we can do wonderful things if we need to, quickly. If that happens, we're on the right track. I think also what you see with the European health data space is Europe is pushing this agenda. Fingers crossed, the more people are saying we want this, and so we're looking for the different multi-stakeholders to say, okay, we would like this to be the basis, then I think the decision-making becomes a bit easier as well. But the EU has
initiated A2304 Part 2. They've paid for the Label2Enable project, so you do see a commitment there from the EU.
One last question.
Thanks. I'm an entrepreneur, do a lot of startup activities, so I think it's great protection for what startups do, because if they get ready to scale, you don't want it to have too much surprises, right? I was just wondering, do you foresee the idea or the concept of playgrounds where startups can play with whatever legislation is coming their way, or play with whatever you have found out during the project?
So what we did do is, as you can see here, we said none of the apps have probably been built with A2304 Part 2, let alone the handbook, because that's what we were working at. So we did suggest that we created, for the 81 requirements, we created sub-questions, like how do you assess whether you meet this requirement? And we also created what we call the pass-fail. So when is it sufficient evidence? And we suggested that there's a phase where you can say, okay, there's a pass-fail 2025, a pass-fail 2026, and then by 2027, we're where we want to be to enable companies to build in the requirements. Of course, the basis is likely what is already mandatory for legislation. So that's where you start, and then you gradually build up. And the idea is that there will be slight changes every year, adapting to changes in different fields. So it might be changes in technology, changes in legislation, changes in requirements, etc.
Okay. We will luckily be joined by Petra again for the final reflection and debate, so save your questions for then, and we will revisit it. Thank you so much, Petra.
You're welcome.
Now we have the pleasure to hear the story from a person who has been successful scaling across the EU and the world, and also with a special eye for international standards and leveraging WHO recommendation. We have Jeffrey Kretz, the co-founder and CEO of Quid. I think we need to speak the slides back to you. Let's go.
Good. So hi everybody, so I'm Jeffrey, co-founder and CEO of Quid, and a little introduction on Quid. So at Quid we create mobile app helping people to quit addictive behavior. So the first one we did was Quid, the same name, and it helped people to quit smoking and quit nicotine. So today it has more than 4.5 million users around the world. It existed in 13 languages, and it's validated and recommended by the WHO. So I will try to explain how everything was started and how we are where we are right now. Anyway, it's better. And so I will try to explain how a little French startup leveraged science, technology, and collaboration to build a worldwide solution. So as a lot of startups, it started with a personal story. So it was me in 2012. I was a smoker, not so proud yet. And I have two daughters, and at this time they were telling me a lot, Dad, you have to quit smoking every day. And they were right. And I was also a software engineer, and I wanted to do something. It was to work in the mobile app field. So I was a web and database developer, and it didn't please me so much, and I really wanted to do something around app. And so at this time I launched App Store. I looked at what existed, and the app I saw didn't please me so much. They were either ugly or not so user-friendly, or didn't appeal to me. And so I was, okay, what the heck, I will just build my own app. So the beginning was a little bit tough. It was a side project. So I worked on the weekend, I worked the evening. As I said, I'm a software engineer, so I have no medical background. I have no HCP network, and I had no team and not money. So I had to do everything. That's also a good thing. And I still achieve a few great things with not so much. So after 4 years of working on it in the weekend and in the evening, and getting also help a lot by receiving emails and feedback from users telling me, thank you, you changed my life. So that's a good way to have energy to work even at night. And so we achieved to get more than 1 million users organically. I love to play, I love playing, and so I built a gamification layer to make the experience as fun as possible. And it was validated by the feedback of the people. I started more or less randomly or by chance RCT in the US. It was not finished because of the COVID, but still it was great being approached by the Pittsburgh University asking me why my app, made in my garage or in my living room, was better than the app they built with HTTP, with a lot of people working on it, and nobody want to use their app, but everybody want to use mine. And I also achieved to get a lot of press, because at this time, everybody was speaking about the new app. There is an app for everything, and so having an app to quit smoking was still something that makes people, oh, you have an app for that, yeah. And during that time, to be honest, I quit smoking, I start smoking again, I quit smoking, I start smoking. So sometimes I had to lie and say, okay, yeah, I'm not a smoker now, and now it's 8 years, so it's okay. But at this time, it was not always so easy. So then in 2016, I quit my job, I make another startup, it didn't work, it fails, and so in 2017, I focus, I make quit, okay, now I'm confident enough to be able to build a company around that, and I started. So at this time, I still needed a lot of things. So I needed scientific validation, because when I showed the app to HCP and stuff like that, they told me, oh yeah, it's cool, you have users, but it will never work. You don't have a scientific validation, show me the papers, and stuff like that. When I was looking for money, the angels and the VC told me, yeah, you are solo founder, so it cannot work, you need to have a team. Okay, cool. Still, I had not much money, even if the app was making money and make me a nice, comfortable income. It was not enough to grow. And I reached my UI UX limit, so I'm not so bad, but I'm not either a designer, and so I had a lot of idea of how to make the app better, but it was hard to put the idea and make them into the app. Still, again, we achieved a lot of things. So we hire app psychologists specialized in CBT, so cognitive and behavioral therapies, and so we integrated a lot of CBT stuff into the app. I convinced 2 friends of mine to join me, to leave a nicely paid job to come in the adventure with me. We raised 1 million seed rounds, and we worked with the government on a program called Tabado. We were aiming at professional schools, helping them to quit smoking. And this didn't work so well because the psychologists didn't want to be replaced, and so they never speak about the app when they visit the student. So on the paper, it was great, but at the end, this last part was just cool on the deck. Then it was a great time, COVID. COVID was insane. So everybody was at home, everybody has a lot of money, and everybody was using digital health. The bad part is there is a lot of new solutions who came to life. Everybody thought that they want to be part of it. And also, there is a kind of madness in the funding, and all the startups raise a lot of money and paying the talent far too much money than what they deserve, and so it was tough to hire the best people. It's quite easier now, to be honest. Still, so we achieved to build a team of 10 with mixed talent. So I say psychologists, we have a doctor in public health, we have designers, coders, and stuff like that. We start marketing with big pharma. So we were approached by like AstraZeneca or Perrigo or Pierre Fabre, and they wanted to do stuff with us, and so we tried and started to work with them, and we built a scientific committee. So this was to reassure everybody. So now we have a scientific committee validating more or less everything we do in the app. So with psychiatrists specialized in addictive behavior, with a psychologist specialized in CBTs and with neuroscientists who are analyzing all the data we can gather. And I didn't say it before, but so business model up to then was purely B2C, so direct to consumers. So it's premium. The app was free to use, and there is some feature that users need to pay a small subscription to get access to. And so after the COVID, everything shifted. So we went from, we need to achieve growth at all cost to we need to achieve profitability at all cost. Rising capital was tougher than before. It's more like today. The world was unstable. So Russia at this time was our second market. And when Google and Apple tell us, okay, we don't take any more money from people from there, it was quite a hit from us. So the revenue declined for the first time because we lose overnight a lot of revenue from the Russian guys. And also, since 2016 to 2022, DataX was like a thing. Everybody, the digital therapeutics and digital health was a field. People were looking at it. And then we had the failure of Peer Therapeutics in the US. So it's a big DataX company who was introduced in the stock market. They were valued almost $2 billion. And again, in 2 weeks, they just shut down, and it was a bad sign for all the DataX market. And also working in preventive care, it's quite tough to find people willing to pay for preventive care. So that's, we checked a lot of boxes of making things tougher than what they should be. So mobile app, B2C, and preventive care. Still, again, we are still here. So we achieved a few things. So we were validated by the WHO. That was a cool thing. So they have a kind of framework that you need to comply to. And we comply to it. It was a great thing. So it achieved us also to participate now to their task force trying to fight big tobacco. We are close to profitability, so that's also a good thing. You sleep better when you don't lose money anymore, really. Sorry? I don't smoke anymore. So I also gain a lot of money. And we partner with also health insurance company. So we added a new straw to the bow. In how we make money. And so, for example, there is a big health app in France targeting 10 million of French, and starting in January 2026, we will be their solution reimbursed for smoking cessation. And in the meantime, we also released a second app helping people to quit drinking or to reduce drinking. So that was also something cool. We went from a app making only addressing only one thing to someone more vertical, addressing also a second thing. And we build this the way that we can replicate now easier to any other addictive behavior or psychological pattern like the sleep disease, sleep disorder, eating disorder, anxiety, anguish. So we are now able to replicate more or less easily that. And so finally, what next? So the big challenges are still the regulation. So if you take we were asked a lot, why don't we go to the reimbursed system? Why are we not a digital medical device? And so the easy answer is that it was already answered a little bit. You try to validate software the same way you validate drugs. And so you try to make an app, and then 6 months later, I can now make an update. But users want update every 2 weeks. They want the app that evolves, and it's like antinomic with how the digital medical device need to be validated, and how all the health authority want to validate that. And so today, it's easier for us to try to still be on a direct consumer's way. Even if with initiatives like Label2Enable, maybe it's possible in the future to have best of both worlds. So having like a validated app that can evolve without being penalized, and that respect and comply to guidelines, but that don't need to make an RCT, so a try every time they change a color in the app or a wording in the app. There is AI also coming, so I guess we are just at the beginning of what AI will do in digital health. There was a study released a few days before showing that ChatGPT is already better than therapist to help people, so that's not really. But the study was out, so yeah. And so at least, so there is a big shift that is coming out, and we are only at the beginning. So for the reimbursement part, I already speak a little bit. So it's the way to get reimbursed is super difficult. You need funding, and for example, in France, what the health authority tell to the French startup and scale up is, okay, maybe try to be first reimbursed in the US, and biggest market, and go there, and never come here ask for money. So the countries and the states don't have so much money anymore for the health. Even less for digital health, so you try to be imaginative to generate revenue. So our goals in the future are still to get a clinical validation, because it will open new door that we don't have open yet. Still reimbursement. Continue to mix the model. So there is, for example, in Germany, one successful DIGA. So DIGA is a DataX which is reimbursed, which have both a generic public app available on the app stores, and they have one reimbursed app which is more or less the same than the public one, but more tailored and more narrowed. And so I think that's maybe the best of both worlds. So having a lot of data from the public app, and use all that to nourish and to improve the validated app. And finally, the US still. I guess even for every European startup, it's maybe easier to scale in the US than to try to be available in all the European countries, because of the language barrier, because of the legislation barrier. And we can only hope that EU and that initiative like Label2Enable go faster to allow us to have one standard to comply to. And with complying to this standard, we would be able to be distributed, reimbursed, and provided in all the European countries. So I guess that's it. There is plenty of room for questions.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
We have time for questions and comments, if anyone feel like it. Yes, we have a question down here. And another up there.
Est-ce que ça marche? Oui. Hi. Okay, so you said you found 2 co-founders and then you raised 1 million. So where are the 2 co-founders the source of accessing to this first 1 million euro seed ticket?
No, they were just. They were determinant in the fact that I get shut down because I was a solo founder at this time. And showing the ability to build a team around myself was one of the key factors.
And did you find like French investors or international?
It's mostly French. So we have Kima Venture and some other angels, but it's mostly French. Or French who now live in the US or live in Luxembourg or stuff like that, but mostly French.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey.
Welcome.
All right. In a minute, you will gain access to coffee and cake outside. But before that, we have a brief practical presentation from the Danish Life Science Cluster, especially towards their member companies. Is that right, Morten? There's a mic over there.
It is correct. I will do this quite briefly. What I'm about to tell you is not as remotely as interesting as you have already been witnessing, so please bear over with me. I will do this in Danish because it's only relevant for the Danish participants. However, I have made these slides into English, so if you international delegates of this conference find this interesting, please be my guest and read the slides. I'm sorry for this, but it's very, very necessary. Okay, jeg kører det lige på dansk det her. Det er til jer, der har tilmeldt jer den her konference gennem vores system WebIMO. Vi er meget, meget glade for at kunne være med til at co-hoste den her konference. En af forudsætningerne for, at vi kan være med i Danish Life Science Cluster gennem erhvervsfyrtårnet Life Science, det er, at vi sørger for, at deltagerne de får registreret den tid, de har brugt på at deltage i det her event. Så I vil gøre mig og mine kolleger en meget, meget stor tjeneste, jer der har tilmeldt jer gennem vores WebIMO-system, og huske at udfylde de papirer, der skal udfyldes, ledelseserklæring, de minimiserklæring, og så udfylde timerne, når vi er færdige med konferencen. Fordi når I har gjort det, så får vi nemlig dem med ind i vores regnskab, så vi kan blive ved med at lave events som dem her, også i fremtiden. Så på forhånd, tusind tak, and thank you very much for this practical intermezzo.
Yes, thank you, Morten. Mic's on? Yes, excellent. Okay, I'm happy to see all of you here, because now we have perhaps the most interesting segment today, where we all take in the impressions we've had and digest them together. I think we should attempt to make it an open conversation with the whole room, so you please feel free to ask questions, share insights, comments. But to open us up, I have one question for each of you, and for some of you, if you want to share as well. The question is, what is your most interesting or most important takeaway from today? Would you like to start, Yvette?
Is it on? Yeah. I'm singing.
Are we sitting too close? Whoa. Okay.
Yes.
Technical difficulties. But 2 people on the job.
Try again.
Okay, we haven't had this many mics on stage yet.
Should we be in different corners?
Yeah, maybe. But there are not that many corners on the stage. Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Your most important takeaway.
Most important takeaway. Well, I think I'm really hopeful that there's so much going on the subject of the transnational scaling of innovations, and that everybody is also aware of the user-centered part of it. And I'm really glad that we're apparently getting this great European energy-like label to evaluate our apps, so that also the users can see what app to be used and what app not to be used, and for the makers also to be distinctive from one another. So I think that is what I will take home with me to the Netherlands.
How about you, Petra?
I usually need something like a day to let certain things sink in, and then I would be able to tell you better, but I'll make an effort anyway. First of all, I'm really curious what is in your book. Because as I mentioned, for these type of quality requirements, we couldn't use legislation or standardization because it isn't there. So I'm interested to see, and I already asked you, where there isn't legislation and standardization, we usually look at other things, including what has already been researched. So I'm interested to see that. Often a certain word sticks with me, and in the very first part was the digital biomarker. And what you've heard me say is that an app is not a pill, but there are things where I think there are similarities, so I have to chew on it a bit, but I think that yes, that is one of the values that an app can bring, and good to look at it from that perspective. So I have to chew a bit on the word digital biomarker.
Enjoy. And how about you, Jeffrey? What made an impression?
So as a manufacturer, I would say that it's pretty cool to have something like this framework to show the people how an app is ranked, because that will build the people trust. And one super important thing in digital health is having the patient and the user trust to help them better. And so I guess having a label like that would be great, and hopefully it will happen quickly, sooner than later, and that would change, I think, a lot in the manufacturer world.
I feel like a lot of people feel the same here today. So I have a lot of questions, but I'm curious if any of you have any important takeaways or question for the panel you haven't had answered yet. Yes, there's a question down here. And we need a debate and we need some reflections, so please let's go.
Can you hear me? Yes, better. So fantastic job you've been doing, Petra, on the app, B2C app. Do you think it could be possible to do the same for also B2B? I mean, normally we have to be validated by pilots in hospitals, so per se you get that quality stamp. But if you have a huge increase of B2B SaaS solutions, could it be an advantage for us European startups to get also such a label to be able to distinguish yourselves versus US and China, but also within Europe?
So it's not particularly just for business to consumer, although a label, of course, in an app store environment, similar to when you buy a washing machine, you also have the energy label there. But we created also the Health Hub Quality Report together with doctors. So what do they need to feel comfortable recommending apps? And as a next step, I'm also looking into health technology assessment. Do they check the same things? Because currently, in all these 27 countries, regions, hospitals, doctors, patients, a lot of different stakeholders do the same thing over again if they are interested in should I use, purchase, reimburse, recommend this app. And we're hoping that the Health Hub Quality Report in the end will contain the information that these stakeholders need, also the medical society. So I think if an app is a genuine health intervention, it should be in the medical guidelines. But currently, medical guidelines don't have that much apps in there at all. And what we see is that medical societies struggle. How do we do that even? And how do we give guidelines to doctors and training to doctors and other health professionals? So we do aim to have something that's both B2B and B2C. Yeah.
Yes, but I agree with that. And one thing that was not so much mentioned is that, okay, even if you have your app validated and by a label or a norms, it doesn't mean that the HCP will know about it, that they will use them. And so there is also a lot of job and a lot of work to do on how to integrate all those great apps into the patient pathway, the patient journey. And that's also another story, and I guess there will be a solution on that. And all the HCP, the hospital, the clinic need to be trained at how to use those solutions, how to integrate them, and once they do, will they change it? Is this validated? And there is a lot of risk also assessment to do. And finally, how also those solutions integrate with all the data system, the health data hub and stuff like that, because if you use data from the hospital, okay, that's a lot of compliance to do to integrate with that.
Here?
Yes.
Or comment?
I'm one of the co-founders of Bubble Bear, where we try to help people we do that in all kind of measures, but primarily mental health. And I'm pretty curious about, like, today we said how to adapt and scale. And I really, when you said, Jeffrey, you also said, okay, we are in the EU, we are looking how can we scale. I'm a co-founder, I would like to scale my company. And you said the first thing you other people told you, go scale in the US, right? So how can we find solutions so it's easier to scale in EU? And also, like, when we look at legislation, really interesting to see the label concept, but also, like, when we look at Denmark, we have EU legislation, but sometimes it's also how does each of the countries adapt this EU legislation into the country. That's not the same. So sometimes we are compliant with the EU legislation in Denmark, then we'll go to another European country, then we are not. So I'm just curious, like, how can we make it easier to scale? And I know it's not a question you can ask, but just like to debate, what could we do to make it easier for all the good solutions that are around here today, to scale them to help even more people. So yeah.
Concerning the EU versus the US, so they have one advantage, they speak only one language, it's the English. And I guess because even between the states, they don't have the same legislation. So they use the federal law, but even with that, Texas doesn't have the same law that Arkansas or that I don't know, California. So they have some of the same concern that we do. They don't have the same health provider depending on the state, and so it's closer to the UE than we think, except the language. But one thing, they are far better than us. They don't hesitate to travel. And so if you want to scale around Euro, you need to attend to the big medtech event, health tech event, like Vivatech in France, Web Summit in Portugal, and stuff like that. So you need to travel to make other people know you. Because one of the biggest issues is how do we make sure that everybody knows about us? And usually you have a solution in a quiet, crowded market, being the blue ocean is quite rare. And so you need to stand out between a lot of other solutions doing more or less like you. And so if people don't know about you, they won't reach you. So the first thing is travel, go to events, like go to France if you can, go to Germany and speak about your solution. That's the first step to having other people think about you and, okay, I need a solution to quit smoking. I've so quit there, okay, maybe I will just reach them and maybe something will work out. And most of our deals with non-French business partners was like that. I attend to event and they see me, and 6 months later we speak again, and from that something happened.
Yeah. How do we scale? How you mentioned that European legislation can be interpreted different in different countries. So what we try to do is align with EU level legislation and values, and then look into what is different. So when looking at different frameworks, you do see differences, but the majority is the same so far. But examples of, and what we hope is that if we have that, if we've done it on a European level, that will be accepted by the different countries, and that they only do the things that are specific to their context. And for example, in Germany, you see that there's national legislation, there's national standardization. The UK says, do you use the NHS patient identifier? What did the specific authority, did they do a check for you? What did they say? France is a lot interoperability with Mon Espace Santé. So there are differences, but if you look at the majority of the quality requirements, they're more or less the same. And we hope that part, if we can harmonize that part, then it's only, well, my guess has been 5, 10, 20% at the most, but it's so far less, that you would need to do again to come where you want to come. Yeah.
Yes. So as a designer, I'm always looking in concepts, and so for successfully scale up, I think two things are necessary. So if you want to scale up something, there has to be a need or urgency. They want the product, but also ownership. And for a metaphor, you have the Mikler Running Club, I guess, here in Denmark, and they have all those satellites clubs over in the world, and they started as a running club.
And if you want a running club somewhere else, you have to go there and start running. Yeah? You have to engage people in running. And if they think, okay, we also want to be part of the Mechelen Running Club, then you start thinking about, okay, how do we facilitate them? And I think that should also be in scaling up digital health solutions. And I also heard the word app a lot, but it is much broader. Health products, technical solutions. And I heard a few process steps today. I think we had it about the guideline, the design guideline. Before you start designing a product, build it modular so you can scale up. We had it during the process about the guideline for user participation. I heard also, if you have a product, how do you fulfill all the regulations? So shouldn't we build a EU digital health, mental health design toolkit? So as a startup, you know, okay, in every phase, what you have to do, which products they're already there, so you can use them as tools. Maybe an idea. What do you think about it?
In part, it's what we do, because with all of the quality requirements around it, we created a handbook, which explains a couple of things. So has notes, sometimes guidance. This is where you can find something. Then the type of questions that are answered to pass a requirement, and then what's the pass-fail. So to provide some guidance is definitely what we tried to do. What we steer away from is saying you should take this app, because that depends a bit on user needs, context, goals, etc. But we're just trying to create in a standardized way the ingredients that these decision makers might need to decide, oh, well, this is indeed something that fits my needs and my context and my circumstances. I'm sure that there's more possible still, but I do hope that there's at least a starting point, and at least something that we try to do is not duplicate efforts. So, for example, there has been a previous project European that created personas of different ages, different health conditions, and we refer to it like this is available, you can use it. And that's why I also started with, I'm interested to see what is in this booklet. Yeah.
Just to add something, you have still to take care about framework and standard, because if there is only standard, there is no innovation. And so if you want to stand out and do things differently, so standard are the base, and then you can see, okay, how can I do things differently to evolve and go to the next step? And so I guess innovation really thrive when there is something existing and you just want to do differently the things. So standards are great because it's a base. They should work, but also don't stick too much to it and try to, change things.
I have one of my key takeaways from today, and that's of course it's something I know from my work as well, but partnerships are not only nice. If you want to scale up, they seem essential. It's my takeaway from today that you really can't do anything on your own. So my reflection is, how do we accelerate this? Who should do what tomorrow to enable more partnerships? Do you have any reflections?
I can say something about it.
Yes,
because,
please.
With the scaling of the SAM app, we really learned that it's crucial who you want to partner up with. And that in some countries you had to have a scientific research partner, and in other countries somebody totally different, like an innovation health manager. So I think it's really good to know in what country your entry point is. So we learned for the German market and the Australian market, it is the scientific research unit that first adopts you, and then you have an alliance with them, and then you build on it, and then you can spread your idea, your app, or your whatever you do. But they need to see that it's working, and they need to see there is a need for their users. Whereas in other countries, like the Ukraine, they just wanted marketing materials because they already understood that they said it works. So we just don't want to lose any time for people just to use it and start using it. So we provided Ukrainian text and flyers about SAMAP. So I think it's key to know with what party you need to partner up with and then invest in that relationship.
How do you find them? How do you know who is the
Well, for us, and it is in the autism field, of course, started with the autism professors in the Netherlands to learn what the professors were in the other countries, or the patient network, just the federations. And it started out there by just emailing them, reaching out to them, and then seeing what people would reply and what people would like to collaborate with you. So, and then you feel there's the right energy to do so, and then you start collaborating and investing. And there are a lot of countries that are really difficult to reach. For instance, the UK, I have a few leads there, but it's really slow. So every 4 to 5 months I have a meeting, but it hasn't led to anything yet. But I still keep pursuing it, because maybe in the end, in a year or 2 years, it will lead to something. So don't know if it answers the question, but...
Definitely. Any other reflections on partnerships?
I'm reflecting on the UK in that sense. I think UK is organized per region, as is Sweden and Spain. So that might be something when you look at the authority, at least, if that's what who you're talking to. There are European initiatives, twinnings type things, etc. But I would agree with you that it may differ per country. Who do you need? And starting with the specialists in the field, particular to your product, seems like a good idea.
The only one. I think when you're looking for funding, they all ask, will your solution be scalable? So I'm just with you. You need to travel. I agree with Geoffrey. To go abroad and meet whether researchers or HTPs from various countries demonstrate you have traction. But when you have no funding, how do you even pay for the travel? So sometimes it's just chicken and egg issue, because you have people you can reach out remote online, but it's never, ever the same as with having a talk like we have today. So could EU say, for some European startups, we don't only want to help fund just the pure coding ID research, but also the travel time of the people who are in search of looking for partners and meet them live, not just remote.
Pharma, for example, where they can pay for everything. There is not so much, but there is. So you need to identify the pharma and check, and sometimes they have some programs and they try to find solution aiming their therapeutic areas. And in that case, if there is some cost to cover, they can cover the cost.
I think it starts again with you. What you said is who has a need.
Yeah.
And then they might have the funding. Might, not always. That's true.
Which I think would be great to raise here again. If you are a small or medium-sized digital health provider getting interested in international standards, what do you do tomorrow? Where should you focus? How should you prioritize? Any reflections on this dilemma?
I gave a few people my LinkedIn as a starting point. So ISO 82304 Part 2 is available via the ISO store. Then you get access to the full technical specification, as it's called. So that is a starting point. As mentioned, we're looking into, as a next step, a demonstrator phase with a number of apps. And what we try to do is be very diverse every time, because that's what real life is. There are very diverse types of apps, and how can we include those. What we did try to do with 82304 Part 2 is combine a lot of the things that were already out there. So there, the guideline references 28 existing standards, and thus trying to, make it a bit easier. As a startup, as mentioned, when we first initiated 2 apps, it was quite difficult to find, okay, what is a good app? When do we do it well? and we try to make that a bit easier. Yeah.
Maybe I can reflect on it a little. For us, it was also really beneficial to be ORCA assessed. So this opened a lot of doors internationally, so that you can show. Of course, we also did the Label2Enable with our SAM Junior app. But then you can say, well, look, there's a body had looked at us, they have assessed us, and you can see the privacy is okay, the professional assurance is okay. And then also per country, but that is a bit time-wise, like in Belgium you have the online hulpapps.be, and so you can engage with that kind of platforms and then get a stamp. And then you have also somewhat more entrance in the country you want to scale up to.
And the idea for me from a stamp is that you can get a stamp afterwards, but it's even better if you know what you need to do to get that stamp afterwards, and you can build in what fits your app. And intentionally there's, within the 82304 Part 2 technical specification, there's 81 quality requirements, 67 of them are score impacting, but it doesn't mean that everything needs to be covered. It's just that if you look at what are the needs of my customer group in my context, etc., then it hopes to provide perhaps even a vocabulary with your stakeholders on what are the things that matter, and then you can build those in, and then the assessment afterwards is more or less only a confirmation of what you already built in.
So, yeah. There, okay. Let's go.
Is it on? I think it's on. It's just a different kind of question. It's actually especially for you, Yvette. I just heard your presentation out there in the lounge area. Very interesting. And first of all, thank you very much for these European perspectives on this issue. It's very interesting, especially for a Dane. I mean, even within Denmark, how we see the legislation varies from region to region and municipality to municipality. So it's quite difficult for many companies to get into the market. But my question, Yvette, is when you make this kind of app, the SAM app you talked about before, how do you make sure that the quality of the app actually meets the requirement of the patients and the users? You know, not now, but also in the future, if you don't have any clinical staff in between. You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, we ensure that we keep on developing the app according to the needs of autistic people using it. So we have a panel of people with autism. We call it our SAM ambassadors. And we engage with them 3 to 4 times a year, and we ask them what they would like different in the app, so we could develop further with them, and then we test again with them. So it's an ongoing preparation of making the SAM app better. For example, we had a lot of feedback that they wanted to fill in a stress questionnaire whenever they wanted, not at the set times of the patterns. So now in the update which is coming up, they can just fill in a questionnaire whenever they like. And they also told us we don't want to see it back in the insight page. So they just want to fill in a random questionnaire about their stress, but don't need to see it back. So these kind of things you only know if you engage with them, ask them. And of course we do what the majority of the people want, because not everybody is on the same page. But is this an answer to your question? This is how we keep aligning with them. And I really would love a SAM panel in every country we're actively implementing in. So next step is hopefully getting a Danish SAM ambassador panel, so we could content-wise keep the Danish people with autism provided with the right content.
I'm not allowed to answer your question because I don't have the mic. Thank you for your answer. I think it's very interesting also in terms of, you know, this user involvement from the super report, because that's an interesting way of developing, you know, new digital solutions for the patients. So I believe it's quite relevant. So thank you very much for the question, for the answer.
With regard to keeping the users involved, I've done quite a bit of testing with people with low health literacy. And in the Netherlands, that's 1 in 3 people. In Europe as a whole, it's 1 in 2. So quite a large group. But the ones that likely struggle most, and to me it's been, even though you try to make the most simple app possible that everybody can use, it's only through testing with them that you find out things. How certain words, whether their vocabulary is less, they have more trouble reading, less abstract thinking and so forth. And I would say try to make an effort to get the most difficult users involved as well. Research says that if it works for them, it works usually for others as well. So it's not as if you were just focusing on the most difficult users, but it actually benefits other users as well. So good to take into account, I think.
Yeah, and also just one thing. So you have a lot of qualitative data, but also one chance and one opportunity you have with a digital product is you have a lot of data, quantitative. And so assessing the data, using them, using the patient-reported outcome and experience to improve the product, it's something that you need to do all the time. In fact, that's the way you are sure that your product will be the best in class, by leveraging all the user data that you have. The same way you improve a website by having Google Analytics everywhere, you can do the same with your apps. And this way you are sure that it's used, it's engaging. You can A/B test even on wording. Will this wording work better than this one? Should this button be green, red, or yellow? I don't care. You can test everything, and with enough data to get the best path.
Have a comment or question?
About quit. So from your story, I remember you saying that you were asked a lot of initially you started off by creating the solution based on the problem that you faced, and as you started creating it, and eventually when you went outside, people started questioning you because you didn't have these certifications. So at that point, did you make a decision to go down the road of having a certification, and if not, why not, or if yes, why?
Today I still need a good something to earn from being a medical device, and I see more things to lose by getting this way. So still we try, because I'm stubborn, and maybe I will get it one time. But at the moment it's working nicely. Even the partners, either the pharma or the health insurance, they don't care so much. So I think I'm ready for the future when it won't be needed anymore. So, yeah. But still, if I had to do it, everything to change, to do it again, maybe I will choose a pure medical way. But I will probably have failed faster because you need more money, and maybe your solution doesn't work at the end. So I had the chance to find usage quickly, and this changed everything. Welcome.
Hi, yes. Hi. So I'm Tom, a researcher at Thomas More, and I think it was a very interesting discussion this morning, also already this afternoon. What I wanted to ask all of you actually and your point of view concerning this particular challenge is that, as far as I'm concerned, there's one big elephant in the room, which is the medical device regulation. I mean, it's been hinted at a couple times already, but from my personal perspective, I think it might be overly restrictive, especially for digital mental health applications, where, as you've given as an example, it's applying the principles of a pill to an app, not taking fully into account the intricacies of app development and iterative changes and so on. It's still even not the same as like an actual medical device, like an insulin pump for people suffering from diabetes. And I feel that to some extent we are doing meaningful things in the margin, like user involvement, like increasing the quality of well-being apps that are outside of the formal scope of the medical device regulation. And I was wondering how you would feel, or what are your opinions regarding, for example, an exemption for digital mental health apps within the medical device regulation, which is, for example, a practice that Australia is currently applying. where they allow digital mental health apps to operate under their medical device regulation, but in a slightly less strict and more flexible environment. Would that, for example, Geoffrey, encourage you to more actively explore certification as a medical device? Would that be something you would do, Yvette, for some? Do you think, for example, the ISO could be a great starting point to build on such an exemption? That's basically my food for thought for you guys.
It was less restrictive, and if I didn't have to redo trial and prove to every time I change something in the app, it would probably some paths we would explore more. So yes, easy answer, yes, if it's less restrictive, for sure. Maybe we try to get class 1, and even for class 1 you can just auto-declare, but yeah, class 2.
Yeah, I think only thinking about it gives me a headache. And I was really glad that Orca said we weren't a medical device, so yes. But if it wasn't such an expensive exercise, and if it was fairly easy to do, I think then I would probably do it, because then it's nice to have a VINC, a green check. So, but now at the moment there's long waiting lists. It costs so much money, and every time you have to do it again if you change something. So it's not workable, I think.
Because you have the medical device certification, that's one thing, but then if you want to get reimbursed, you have used them, and then once you are reimbursed, you still need to make doctors and HCP aware of your solution and prescribed. And even in Germany, they have DIGA, but even DIGA is not a big success. It's 30,000 prescription per month. That's nothing compared to the 3 million prescription monthly of drugs. So, and they are the most advanced in EU. So.
EMDR is something that we aligned with, and Dutch research for the Dutch government showed that about 1 in 5 apps, health apps, are a medical device. 1 in 6 class 2A or above. This was 2018 research. Half of them didn't have a CE mark. It depends a lot on what your claim is and what the current, because the barrier is so high, a lot of those medical claims are downgraded, so you're not a medical device. That's what's currently happening a lot. There's a call now to revise the MDR, and I'm interested to see where that will end up in. But you're right, it is, although the aims behind it are very logical aims, it has become quite the barrier, and the difficulties with getting a notified body are huge. And one of on the one hand, we span both medical device apps and those that are not. We have said we're not duplicating the work of a notified body, which is a legal task, and that requires still some work. How can we get the information that we need to get the label without duplicating the work, and even more the details that we would like to have in the health quality report that informs decision makers? Because in the end, the CE mark, even if you have a CE mark, it's a CE mark. If you need to make a decision about an app, you have a CE mark and you have another CE mark and another CE mark. Which one do you choose? So there's still a need for more information. But I think it will, if you look at what the current feedback is, there's a move towards let's make it a little bit less strict.
Maybe there is also an opportunity to measure real-world evidence. How do we measure that? The app reviews, the usage, engagement, all that stuff. We have a lot of data available. We could imagine UU SDK you plug into the app, you get the data. You want to be MDR, but you integrate the UU SDK in the app, and the UU SDK is a kind of a Google Analytics of everything. And this way we have a lot of data that we can nourish future AI model to help European health get better.
And what has been suggested before is if you first get the ISO standard, that's a good sort of starting point for the rest, because what we did see is the apps that were quickest in providing all the information, because we do ask for evidence, are the ones that have already done CE marking. They have the sort of the evidence readily available, they know how that works, and those were the ones that were quick enough. So on the one hand, there's we would use the information that they've already done, so that's a good starting point. On the other hand, it's been suggested that this is a good learning exercise, and perhaps some things don't need to be duplicated by a notified body as well if you have a label.
We only have 5 minutes left of this session, and I believe we have a question or comment up here.
Thank you. So there was a lot of mention of the EU, so I feel obliged to continue a bit on that as working for the EU. I have a question for both Petra and Yvette. You were both supported by the EU, one from the Horizon, one from Interact. And I am just curious, and I would just like to challenge you at the end of the day, if you would get any funding, what would you do to push the scalability of digital health solutions in the EU? And I know from Petra a little bit already, I've heard some next steps, but still curious to hear from you and also from Yvette how you would take that on. Thank you.
Intriguing question.
Nice question, Femke. I think it would be really helpful to also emphasize the implementation part. So all the differences there are in the different countries, and make kind of a roadmap for the people who are working in digital mental health to find their way in the different countries, how to find the right parties to work with, so smooth that out. Don't find out the wheel every time again. And well, things like the super guideline we made, I think that's really helpful if you have that for every stage and phase in scaling up. So you don't have to make the mistakes that people made before you, and maybe have a point of questioning where you can just go to like an advisory point, EU advisory point that really knows the answer to the questions you're asking and not telling you to go to the other person. I think that would be really helpful. So maybe I will apply for another grant, Femke. And with the super project, we will continue and make some kind of roadmap.
Yeah, so both 82304 Part 2, the development, and Label2Enable were EU funded. And talking to more authorities, they actually say it would be fantastic if EU makes a next step, because then the decision making in our country will be a lot easier as well. So what we saw is we did an interview study with Italy and Catalonia on their jobs in integrating health apps, their gains and their pains. And one of the pains was if there's a lack of legislation or a specific legislation or a gap, and a lack of standardization, then within a country we need to have all these different authorities and the stakeholders agreeing on what do we do. So to scale, that was mentioned as would be good if EU takes the next step. What we try to do a lot is looking into what are the different stakeholder needs, trying to make that as international as possible. So for example, testing the label we did in 4 corners of Europe, in Sweden, in Hungary, in Italy, and in France, to see, okay, what is likely to be, to give a direction as well for other countries. We created a roadmap on next steps where, since we developed the handbook app assessment, we tested it with, or we evolved it with 24 apps, and with all those learnings, we created the final version, and we would actually like to have a demonstrator phase where we can see it works, and where we can also test the Health Hub quality report. Does that indeed provide the information that the doctors need, that the insurers need, that the health technology assessment bodies need, that different people need, so that there's less of a duplication of efforts, because currently there's on the one hand a huge duplication of efforts if people even engage in it, because for a lot of the decision makers, an app will be or other digital health tool will be a new topic that they don't necessarily know a lot about, and that they will not easily engage in if there isn't credible guidance that makes them feel comfortable in taking that next step. And that's what you see for a lot of different stakeholders. Also in Frontrunner Germany, where recommending or prescribing health apps is on the one hand a fantastic example, and great that there's so much research about it as well. But you also see that, looking at what do the different stakeholders need and how can you adequately meet those needs is quite a step, and great if we can learn from all those experiences, and we hope that we can do that with the roadmap. So if you can influence it,
yes,
please.
I think that is an excellent place to end this conversation. Also because we're out of time. So I would like to end this day by saying, on behalf of the Danish Center for Digital Psychiatry, thank you to Danish Life Science Cluster and Lundbeck for being such excellent partners today. Thank you to the keynotes and all you speed talkers for participating and making this day so much better. Thank you to the super team. Thank you to the event team. I would like to say a special thank to my colleague Søren Lange Nielsen. He has put a lot of time and effort into making this day possible for all of us. So thank you very much, Søren. And finally, of course, thank you to all of you for being here and making this day so lively and interesting. See you.